Every film is a new opportunity for musical expression, and whilst every score is unique, some are more than others.
Great shape. Same thing, 72? 72 is...
By unique, I mean distinctive, unconventional, or contextually different. Scores that combine great music craftsmanship with visionary thinking and innovative languages, conceived in the minds of creative geniuses, at the request of brave directors who dared to sound different. A tandem that resulted in truly masterpieces of film music idiosyncrasy. Ben and Hermman is one of the most prestigious film composers of all times. From Psycho to Taxi Driver, Hermman scored dozens of films. None, though, is as distinctive as The Day the Earth Stood Still, in part due to its extensive exploration of the theremin.
Oh yeah, it's a theremin.
The theremin is the first electronic instrument ever invented, the sound of which I'm sure you will have heard multiple times.
Space aliens, don't eat me! I have a wife and kids!
Hermman was not the pioneer of this sound in cinema. Before him, a few composers had already used the theremin in film, although never to this extent. Hermman's score contains two theremins amidst a richly orchestrated ensemble featuring brass, organs, electrically amplified strings, bass vibraphones, and an assortment of bells and chimes. If the instrumentation of choice is peculiar, the use he makes of it even more so.
There had arisen by this time what we'd call the Hollywood style, which was to play beautifully and with a lot of expression and vibrato. He didn't want that. He would say, no, forget about your old conceptions.
He wanted a nice sonority, without that intensity.
Hermman creates cold, unexpressive textures, the same way it's often done in modern film scoring. And lets the theremin carry the emotion. The Day the Earth Stood Still combines innovative instrumentation with unusual orchestration and played a great role in shaping the sounds that became uniquely synonymous with the sci-fi genre. When we talk about distinctive scores, there is nothing as groundbreaking as Forbidden Planet. This iconic sci-fi film was innovative in many fronts. It featured Rhodey the Robot, what at the time was the most expensive prom in history, the first Hollywood actress on a miniskirt, and of course, music from another planet.
Louis and Bebe Barron created a soundtrack that was like no other soundtrack that had ever existed before, and they invented electronic music that you know today.
This is how a regular movie looked in 1956. Imagine walking into a cinema to find UFOs, laser guns, and disintegrated tigers to the sound of this otherworldly score.
The fact that a major studio would make the decision on their big spectacle science fiction movie to put this weird music, you can't realize what that was like in the 50s.
It was so different and ahead of its time, the music union wouldn't allow it to be called music, nor the Barrons to be credited as composers. This is how their score was listed instead. If the Barrons' approach is less effective in more intimate scenes, in which tonalities seem incongruous to the emotions expressed by the actors, they perfectly captured the film's futuristic setting, advanced technology, the aura of the characters, and the action on screen. Forbidden Planet is considered to be the first entirely electronic score in history and opened the door to the realm of non-literary sound that thrives today in film music. You might have not seen the movie, but you know the score. The Good, the Bad and the Ugly must be the most instantly recognizable cue in film music history. For Sergio Leone's so-called Dollars trilogy, Italian composer Ennio Morricone single-handed created the sound of spaghetti westerns, bringing to the world an unprecedented sonic palette that became indiscernible with this genre, and it's still being imitated in modern productions today. Ocarinas, jewharps, flutes, gunfires, whistles, harmonicas, guitars, or wordless vocals all became trademarks of the Leone Morricone productions and gave Western a much grittier and seemingly accurate sound compared to the manufactured American heroism depiction found in previous examples. It is certainly the famous whistle that gained Ennio immortality. But one can easily find strokes of genius all over his multifacial score.
Io ho avuto sempre il pallino di mettere dei suoni per la vita di tutti i giorni nei miei arrangiamenti. Molti potranno pensare che è arbitrario mettere dei suoni veri, i suoni di macchina da scrivere appunto, di poltrone, di barattoli, nella musica leggera. Io l'ho fatto per dare un contributo di verità.
Leone later stated that Morricone was his best dialogue and screenwriter. The director understood the magnificence of his partner's score and allowed it to lead the film in many instances. Just like Hitchcock in Hermman or Spielberg in Williams, Leone found in Morricone a passage to glory. Lullabies in movies are a common occurrence. Well, that wasn't the case before Rosemary's Baby. There are earlier examples of nursery rhymes in films, but all as part of diegetic sound coming from the children on screen.
Flora, where did you learn that song?
Yet is Polish jazz icon Krzysztof Komeda, however, the first composer who deliberately makes lullaby sound creepy. This film, considered by many to be the first modern horror, brings fear into domestic terrain. On screen, everyday actions such as cooking or cleaning elicit pure terror. It is no longer Dracula, Frankenstein, or bathroom assassins the viewers are scared of, but the anxiety of being incapable of neither confirming nor denying the paranoia this ordinary woman lives in. This restless psychological uncertainty finds in the score a great ally. Eerie lullabies and disturbing satanic chants are surrounded by uplifting rock, country or jazz cues, creating a musical contradiction that totally disorients the viewer. But rather than diversity, the genius of the score relies on its innovative musical language. Where Hermman would have been loud and direct, Komeda is subtle and quiet, resulting in an unnerving tension that has a great effect in evoking danger where there isn't any. With his haunting score, Komeda shaped the sound of psychological horror as much as Morricone shaped westerns. Gilles Mellé's electronic experimental score for the Andromeda strain is as innovative as it's modern.
I'm Gil Mellé, and most times I'm writing for strings or brass or the other orchestral instruments. But never have I written music such as I'm about to describe. How does a composer depict the sound of men walking on the moon?
He was certainly not a pioneer in the use of synthesizers in film music. Yet this work that dates back from 1971 bears a lot of resemblances to the way some films are being scored today. Mellé was an unorthodox jazz sax player who found in technology a mean of expression. Being unable to afford synthesizers, he started building his own, such as the Tone 6 that gives name to his experimental jazz album, or the percussotron repeatedly used in this movie.
From percussion and electronics, it doesn't work if you don't plug it in. And I'd like to show you some of the things that it does.
The Andromeda strain seems like a somewhat tidier rendition of Forbidden Planet, with the sole difference of Mellé's sound being much more musical while still providing disruptive sonic textures in which his electronic inventions clash with the occasional sound of organic instruments.
Coronary? I doubt it.
This is one of the clear cases in which the score has far outperformed the movie it accompanies. Still on the synth domain, but in a very different direction, Liquid Sky is definitely the weirdest score you will find in this list. The film tells the story of aliens landing in New York City in the search of heroin to find that endorphin produced by the human brain during orgasms is a much more powerful drug. Such bizarre plot is accompanied by music of great eccentricity.
Who wants to teach me?
By 1982, synth-heavy scores were already an established reality, with composers like Vangelis, Wendy Carlos or Brad Fielder defining the sound of the decade. And whilst Blade Runner is considered to be the greatest synthcore of the time, Slava Tsukerman's new wave approach is totally hypnotic, a unique cocktail of punk rock, vocal sampling and trippy synth experimentation.
Me and my rhythm box. Me and my rhythm box.
A tiny part of the score, like in Clockwork Orange, features adaptations from pre-existing classical pieces. The rest was improvised on the Fairlight CMI, a highly rare synth at the time. Unpredictable, delirious, raw yet full of subtleties, the score's oddity played a massive part in turning Liquid Sky into a cult classic. Unlike most of the other scores on this list, this one is both unconventional and memorable. Mansell borrows from an immense pool of genres such as classical, hip-hop, techno or rock to create his own cocktail of versatility that at times sounds like Psycho, Gorillaz or Stranger Things. Mansell's sound is edgy but fixated, with dramatic highs and lows that are very evocative of the drug addiction that the film's characters share. And above all, it is overwhelmingly present.
I mean, I've had producers say to me, you know, can you make it more neutral? I'm going, you mean you want the music to do nothing? You just want, you know, and I'd always rather be bold and go, okay, let's sort them, men from the boys here.
I'll explain.
Yet rather than obstructing the story, it complements it. In short, the more the characters deepen into their drug addictions, the further away they move from their life goals. This element of tragedy is carried by the string quartet, a clever analogy of the four characters. And in parallel motion with the storyline, the strings grow and evolve, until eventually reaching their full, uniconic Requiem form. Representing drug addiction's final victory over their dreams, as foretold in the title. Mansell's adventure with the Kronos Quartet is one to remember. For this high school neo-noir film, Rian Johnson recruited his cousin Nathan, who composed a score using household appliances and modified instruments recorded on a laptop mic in his own room. The result is a creative, almost tactile score with an unfamiliar familiarity. Nathan makes individualistic use of instruments such as the trumpet, clarinet or electric piano to create a tense lightness that goes very well against the washed out colors and the stillness in the action on screen. Johnson gives each character a sonic identity.
Different from Brick was almost like Peter and the Wolf style, where every character has a theme and a voice.
To represent Brendan, Nathan invented the whinophone. Emily's sound is a repurposed metallophone. Laura has an elegant e-piano riff. And for Pin, Nathan devised a prepared piano with bolts tied to the strings. All these sound avatars intertwine as do the characters throughout the story. What might seem to be a domestic experiment is in fact a very calculated composition that sits in the intersection between junkyard and high art. This particular score has its own distinct uniqueness. It does not use innovative technology nor creates a new language from existing practices. Birdman's unconventionalism relies on its instrumentation alone.
So when Alejandro asked me if I wanted to take part in this film and the score should be just drums, you know, I thought, well, that's a wild idea because there's no points of reference.
Birdman is not pioneer in the field of single instrument score. Carol Reed's classic The Third Man features Anton Kara's lone zither. The zither, being some sort of guitar and piano hybrid, enabled for endless melodic and harmonic possibilities, whilst the plucking of the strings also provided a sense of beat. In Birdman, jazz virtuoso Antonio Sánchez had to squeeze musicality out of rhythm to match the frantic mood of the film.
Exactly. Fuck you. Yes.
Combining different sticks with old drum kit pieces, untuned vintage heads and tape drums, he generates a wide variety of percussive colors and contrast between softer passages and heavier parts. Antonio's score is a powerful and steady rhythmic trip that maps out the character's emotions with utmost precision and almost no sentimentality.
Your ass is great.
Dude, seriously?
When listened as an album, it might sound like a regular jazz drum kit solo. But when added to the picture and hyper camera motion, the combination is a lethal dose of tension and anxiety that keeps the viewer constantly on the edge of the seat. In any movie soundtrack, score and sound design are forced to coexist. Often enough, we find moments where the score fully takes over. On the contrary, some scores go unnoticed and the sound sits at the very front. There are also times in which the music becomes the sound. Yet it is extremely rare to find a movie in which the sound becomes a score. An early example is David Lynch's use of industrial soundscapes to score Eraserhead. In modern times, the soundtrack of Martin Scorsese's Silence has a very similar approach.
I think Marty approached this movie with a very deliberate intention of not making it like a lot of movies we see today with slam bang crash sound and fast cutting. I think he wanted everybody in the beginning of the movie to calm down and start to think and feel about what they are seeing.
Composers Kathryn and Kim Kuggle were asked to mine the depths of nature to discover its musical voice. Waves, rain, crickets, wind or rocks align with distant human voices and faded drones to create a zen-like ambient soundscape that seems to pour out from the very landscape on screen, as if it was the voice of God guiding Portuguese missionaries on their crusade in Japan. The score is occasionally embellished with biwa and viola da gamba, symbolic instruments of Japan and Portugal, and was conceived before the film was cut as some sort of big music library for Scorsese to pick and edit as he saw fit. The result is an inventive blurring of score and sound design that allows nature to sing with the full gamut of human emotions. And you, which movie would you add to this list? Please let me know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed the video, like, share and subscribe. Thanks for watching.